Good morning, aviators. Welcome back to another podcast. I'm so sorry that it has been so long since I've done one of these. I've just been super busy knocking out flight time, trying to catch flights, and I got back from a vacation that was very well much needed. So this week's topic, I kind of took a poll to see what exactly it was that you guys wanted to see. And I kind of got mixed reviews between talking about commercial training and tailwheel training. So I'm going to kind of branch off of both. But first, something very important that I really wanted to discuss because I have been really interested in watching aviation air disaster videos recently. And I took a class just, I believe, a couple semesters ago over the summer, and it was discussing about aeronautical decision making and how we can mitigate risk. So, as pilots, a lot of people don't consider us to be like one of the mainline jobs, in my opinion. Like, you don't really hear of anything regarding, pilots and safety. You never hear anything about, well, so and so did this. It's very rare to hear of a plane crash, which is very true. It's very rare to hear of something that went wrong, which is not true. There are quite some things that do go wrong in aviation, and there's a handful of ways that we as pilots can mitigate those risks. So, in all actuality, ADM, aeronautical decision making, is one of the most important top tier lessons that a pilot can learn. And from my experience personally as a pilot, it's really one of those important things that we need to drill into each other's heads. Like, okay, we brief each other on the flight. We brief ourselves before we take off. We, brief the weather. There's so much to being a pilot. There's so much more than just, getting in the plane and going. There's pre-flight. There's your NW craft. You have to make sure you comply with 91-103, 91-205. And if you have inoperative equipment, 91-213. You must be able to recall, accept, and declare is what I like to do. Recently, I just watched a video. I'm not going to tell anybody what case it was, but it was a pilot who seemingly didn't really know how to read the instrument panel. They were a certified pilot, but it was obvious that it was a new aircraft that they should have had training in a little bit before they had taken off with a passenger, and they didn't know how to read the instrument panel and were ignoring ATC. So one of the most easiest ways to combat something is by accepting something. And I remember in my class, my ADM class, we really harped on accepting risk and knowing that it's there. But once you accept it, you do what you can to mitigate it. Because the most important thing for a pilot is admitting that there's something wrong. You can't just go out and be like, okay, I'm going to fly with one magneto. You can't logically do that, right? I mean, you possibly could pull it off, but what are those, personal minimums, and what happens if the other one fails? Then you're basically out of luck. And so I really like to emphasize the point on being cautious, because, a cocky pilot is a good one, but a cautious pilot is also a good one. And so having a perfect balance of in between, that's called confidence. In between, those two things, it's like the perfect balance. Now, it definitely depends on, where you're at in your training. How comfortable do I feel? Because me personally, looking back when I got my private pilot's license at 70 hours, I would have been like, no, I'm not taking that cross country. If, I'm not taking that cross country at night. Okay? I'll take the cross country during the day solo, but I'm not doing a cross country at night solo. And so, whereas now I have about 170 hours, I'm almost to 200. As an almost 200-hour pilot, I would definitely feel comfortable taking that cross country at night. I have more night hours now. I believe I have about 60. And so being able to grow and learn about that experience and to become a more qualified and confident pilot is really what brings out safety. Don't do something until you're comfortable with it. Don't do something if it poses heavy undue risk. Like, for example, I had a question come up to me one time, and it was, would you take a cross-country flight in a Cessna 172, all analog gauges, IFR certified in IFR? So, my personal opinion, I am an instrument-rated pilot. I have almost 200 hours, but, 98% of those hours are in a Cirrus SR20 with a Garmin G1000 and not analog. And so me personally, before even considering going IFR, in that Cessna 172 with analog gauges, I would definitely be getting some training. Whether that's, 2 hours, whether that's 10, 20, it all depends on how I feel. And so most people coming from, let's say, analog gauges in their 150 to my Cirrus with the technologically advanced G1000, they're going to be very, very confused. And so being able to put like a stamp on that and say, wait a minute, I can't solo this plane. I don't feel comfortable in this aircraft until I have this many hours of instruction. And at first you may say 5. That's a good number to start with. But in my opinion, like, after flying the analog 150, the Cessna 150, which I love, I actually prefer that over the Cirrus, which shocks people. But after flying that, I have about 3 hours in it, I would go, okay, maybe I need another 3 more to feel comfortable before soloing it, and I can take it on a cross country or whatever. So it all depends on you, your experience, the aircraft, and your personal minimums. Again, the tighter the personal minimums, in my opinion, the better, because once you kind of loosen those up, it's super, super easy to get complacent, which is definitely not what you want to be doing. So, fast forwarding, now that I got to that spiel, let's talk about training. So first off, tailwheel training has been really, really interesting. Going from, a tricycle, fixed gear, Cirrus, Cessna, 172 simulator, you name it, tailwheel is a different ball game. And for me, who's short, 5'5", about, 150 pounds, it's really interesting to see and feel that difference. Like, for me, I'm short, so I have to have a little cushion so I can see over the cowling, or else I'm flying an IFR flight. and that is never a good idea. So, with that being said, I have time in a Super Cub and a Citabria. I have 10 hours in American Champion Citabria and about 6 in, I want to say it's 6, and 6 in a Super Cub. There are definitely pros and cons to both. There's more pros to the Super Cub, in my opinion, than the Citabria. And so I just kind of wanted to elaborate on those. So at first, I was really, really intimidated to fly the Super Cub because this aircraft, if you look at me and compare my size to the aircraft is much bigger and much taller. Whereas me, compared to the Cirrus, the Cirrus is big, but it's not beefy, if you know what I mean. So, I was really intimidated to fly the Super Cub at the first time. And so, I had a fabulous instructor for that, and he was able to get me comfortable and conform to the aircraft, and I ended up loving it. I ended up, flying that thing, like, it was amazing. It's amazing to just throw around an aircraft like that. Like, chasing the Bear River, that was probably my favorite. It was definitely hard, but it was fun. And so, I personally like the Super Cub better because it's easier for me to control. It's easier for me to feel that airplane. Because comparing it to the Citabria is small. It's an acrobatic aircraft, but I felt like the aircraft didn't really 100% fit me. Like, it's really hard to explain without actually having you guys sit in it. But in the long run, the Super Cub was like the star of the show. And of course, I learned lots from both aircraft and both instructors, but in the long run, Super Cub all day. So, tailwheel training is grueling. If I have to be straight up and honest, it's tiring. I haven't gotten my endorsement yet, but I'm getting closer and closer as time goes on. But we're back to Cirrus time now. But I have just been so excited to, try these different aircraft. And as a pilot, it's really important to remember diversity is everything. Because just because you're going to be, an airline transport pilot for Delta doesn't mean that you should be getting experience in other aircraft. They may type rate you for, a 737, and you may only be on the 737, but you want as much experience as you possibly can. And for me, that's important, because the more experience, the more hours, the more aircraft, the more diverse you can build yourself up to be, the better off you'll be as a pilot. And because I only knew how to fly the Cirrus, I was like, oh my goodness, I only know how to fly the Cirrus. So I went out and got some time in a Cessna 150 with analog gauges, super simple. There's not even an attitude indicator in it. And I loved every second of it. Went up, did some spins, and, did some maneuvers, steep turns around a point, stalls. We also did an accelerated stall for the first time, which I thought was so much fun. So it's really just about getting that balanced feel for different aircraft. And going to be a commercial pilot, you want as much experience as you possibly can, even if you have to pay someone else's wet rates for their aircraft. And so I I really, really, really preach about students going to different places and trying different instructors, trying different um, aircraft, getting a new experience, because that's how the airlines are going to be. You may be on the same plane, but you'll be flying with a different captain or a different first officer. And so it's all about building that mind puzzle to complete the picture in the very end. So commercially, um, I've done a lot of cross countries. Last semester, it was 60 grueling hours of cross countries, midnight to 5 a.m., almost every day. But I hated it at the time. But now that I am new semester, new eyes, brand new understanding, that, um, it's, you end up being grateful for some of the worst experiences in your training. Um, I just really want to emphasize on sticking to it even when you lose motivation. You come to a point in your training where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't pick up the pace. I can't keep up. I'm tired. I'm tired of waking up at 5 a.m. I'm tired of, the getting called out to fly. It gets like that. And honey, please preach it, because I totally agree. It gets tiring and taxing, and especially with all I've got going on. I'm running a blog. I'm a part of, a couple clubs. I'm very, very involved within aviation, but I also have hobbies. I love to paint, I love to write, read, draw, and plus I have house chores on top of all of this. I have to cook, clean, do all of that, but it gets tiring. But you must remember that the only plausible way to ever fail at something is if you legitimately give up. And I do have to admit that there has been times where I've thought of giving up. I've had 2 semesters now where things have happened to where I didn't want to continue. But guess what? I'm continuing. But some of those moments when you feel like giving up really end up strengthening you as a person and as a pilot, because it in turn should make you want it more. Someone tells you something that really grips your soul. That's happened to me a few times now. They're like, you can't do it. And you go, wait a minute. Maybe I can't. But then you get in the plane the next time and go, yeah, I can do this. Or maybe you fail something. I failed my instrument check ride the first time. I failed my private pilot EOC the first time. But guess what? I didn't let that hinder my training, my experience, my belief in myself. Sure, it really did hurt my ego for about, a couple, like 24 hours. But as soon as I was able to get back in the plane and realize I can do this, it's really about the teachable moments. Being a pilot is, you're gonna learn. You're gonna fall on your face. It's gonna hurt. You're gonna feel beat up, torn down. There's gonna be some days where you question your life choices. But in the long run, being a pilot is the best choice anybody can ever make. Being a pilot is literally the best choice anybody can make. Better than getting married, better than anything. Because in my opinion, there's so much to learn. There's so much experience to gain. You're flying aircraft. You're defying the odds of physics that, 150 years ago, the only thing that could fly may have been a balloon, if that. And you are carrying on the legacy of two brothers that had a vision of what the future would look like. They wanted to go against what people were telling them. People told them it is impossible. You will never fly. That is absurd. But guess what? They did it. They flew about 20 feet and they did it. The first powered airplane. And so then it moved forward to more pioneers, and aviation evolved quickly. And you're carrying on, Charles Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart, Doolittle. You've got all of these people you are burdening on a legacy for. You are carrying on the legacy. You are living in the past, the present, and the future. And that is why I love aviation. And there is nothing more freeing than getting in an aircraft and flying. There are so many places you can see. There's so many things you can do. It's just so amazing. It is the best choice you will ever make. Better than any other you've ever made. And I can promise that at the end you will realize that it is worth it. Whether or not you're struggling in private, you cannot fly an ILS within ACS standards, whether or not you failed a check ride, whether or not you are hating commercial because of the time building and maneuvers, whether or not you're struggling in CFI to get your lessons passed off to standard, or whether or not you can't catch a breath because it's just too much. But I promise it is worth it. And if you do everything safe and legal, everything will be okay. And sometimes we have to fall flat on our faces to learn something. And for me, I had to fail twice to finally stop questioning whether or not I can do this. And I realized that I can do this. And now I'm the only female left in my class. And I can say I'm going to make it. Confidently. So, I cannot wait for that first day as an airline pilot for SkyWest or Delta. And I may be seeing some of you on my flight, and I absolutely am ecstatic. But in the long run, a confident pilot is a good one. And so, I hope you all were able to take something from this. I didn't really dive super deep into Tailwheel or commercial, but the biggest point of this is good ADM, getting practice, building knowledge, and gaining an understanding of something new. But I really do sincerely promise you that it is worth it. It is worth every penny. It is worth waking up in the morning and realizing that I have $100,000 worth of loans. But every time those wheels leave the ground, a smile always protrudes from the face. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Please like and subscribe and follow my Instagram, Jet Aviator. It is much appreciated, and welcome back, and welcome if you are new. But anyways, I hope you all have a good week and finish strong. Keep flying and fly safe.